I can't believe it is that time of year again. It is top movies, favorite movies of 2022 time again. And I've got a bloody good list this year. I think I have a fantastic list. It was an awesome year for film. I feel like I gave out more top ratings, 5-star ratings than I have in a long time. I genuinely loved so much of what cinema had to offer this year. So I'm excited to crack into the list. But before we get into the list, before we get into my honorable mentions and my favorites of the year, I do want to take a quick second to thank everyone for their support and of Netflix Fix as an Instagram page of all my work, for Novastream Network with the reviews, the interviews, and of course the podcast that I do with Peter Gray Monthly Movie Marathons. So I've started this year excited to grow everything and do so much with the reviews and the interviews and the podcast, but I didn't expect to be in a position that I'm in now, which is getting opportunities and seeing things and talking to people and interacting with the community on a level that I didn't anticipate. So genuinely from the bottom of my heart, or as my grade 5 teacher, Mr. Clark, used to say, from the heart of my bottom, thank you so much. It is the most genuine thank you for everything that you guys have done for me this year. I would not be able to sit here and be as grateful and content and happy with what I have done, but it's only driven me to want to do even more for next year, and next year is going to be a huge year. I'm so excited for some of the stuff that I'm going to release next year and put out for you guys. So if you're wanting to keep on supporting me next year, I will be so grateful for it, and I think you will enjoy what is going to come. So thank you so much to all of you. I love you all so much. But enough sentimentality, let's get into the video. This is why you're here, to listen to my favorite movies of the year and to give you a breakdown of what this year looked like for Netflix Fix in film. I watched 269 movies in total. So that was cinema releases, streaming releases, movies for the podcast, 269, which is a little bit lower than previous years. I did actually do a lot of work with TV series this year for Novastream as well. So I think that's what took up a little bit of time. But of those 269 films, 151 of them were 2022 releases, movies that had come out this year, either cinemas, film festivals, or streaming. And I saw 132 movies at the cinema. Last year, I finished the year on 99 movies at the cinema. So I made it my life's mission to go at least 100 times this year. And I finished with 132. So I'm stoked with that. And just means next year it's going to have to be 150. So of the 151 2022 movies that I saw, I tried to get it down to a list of 20 for my top 20 for the year. And I didn't do a good job at all, because on my private letterbox list that I run throughout the year, that I just continue adding movies into to help me when it gets to, this time of year, I ended up with 43 movies in that list. So I eliminated 3. I've got 20 honorable mentions, because I still think there are 20 movies that are worth talking about. And if it's a title that pops up that you haven't heard of, you should go check it out, because I genuinely think they're great films. And then I've got my 20 movies that are my top 20 that I have to decide right now that they are the list for this video. And you know what? I'll probably finish recording, I'll edit it, I'll upload it, and I'll want to change my mind. That's just the nature of these lists, baby. But honorable mentions for 2022 are, and I'm just going to speed read these out: Matilda the Musical, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Glass Onion, The Menu, Violent Night, Ambulance, My Old School, 3,000 Years of Longing, Broker, After Yang, Diamond Hands, Jewel, Decision to Leave, Moon Age Daydream, X, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Fresh, Bros, Final Cut, and Close. Huge list there of movies for you to check out. I do highly recommend checking them out. But let's get into brass tacks. Let's get into the goddamn meat of things with the top 20 movies. My top 20, my favorite movies, as you may have seen from lists previously, is I have some weird and fucking obscure choices in there. So these are my favorite movies from 2022, my top 20. Let's crack into it. And by crack into it, I mean crack into this, because it's just that time of day, isn't it? Just to have a little bloody drink and celebrate the year. Cheers. All right. Number 20 on the list. Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. The movie stars Emma Thompson, Darren McCormick. This is a beautiful movie. This is one of those movies that is so, the premise needs to work based on the vulnerability of the performers, and Emma Thompson gives an incredibly vulnerable performance in this film. It's basically all set in one location. It's extended scenes of dialogues and conversations, but the themes and the conversations in this film are so well written and so sincere and authentic that it's an incredibly moving film with an amazing performance, not just from Darren McCormack, who was incredible, but an amazingly moving, emotional, and vulnerable performance from Emma Thompson. Number 19 is a movie that's done the festival circuit in Australia, but it's actually not out until, I think, late January next year. That's Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This is wholesome. This is so bloody wholesome. It is such a sweet, charming, moving movie. The animation with the CGI and blended with the real life is absolutely stunning to look at. But it's Marcel, it's Jenny Slate as Marcel, who steals the show in just such a sweet performance as this young Shell. 18 is definitely a movie that was divisive for a lot of people, audiences and critics alike for the year, but for me, it hit home in a way that I've been a fan of this director's work for a long time. I've been a fan of this series in particular, and I think the movie itself is okay, but the final 20 minutes of this movie are just so, not just amazing for fans of this franchise, but also just for the film itself, and that's Clerks 3. If you haven't listened to the new episode of the Monthly Movie Marathon podcast, definitely do, because I talk about this in one of my favorite scenes of the year. I was a mess. I was an emotional, blubbering mess in the final 20 minutes of this film because it did something so wonderful but heartbreaking with the characters, and it's done in such a poignant way that I think Kevin Smith, who wrote and directed the film, I think is his best work. That final 20 minutes of Clerks, I think, is undoubtedly his best work. So I do highly recommend checking it out. Gotta hydrate between takes. Number 17 on the list, possibly the biggest surprise of the year for me. The movie that I saw the trailer and I was like, nah, it'll be fine. I'll probably enjoy it. But turned out to be an effective horror film that scared the absolute living shit out of me. Smile at number 17. God damn, this was a fun movie. I saw this with Josh from Film Notions, a good friend of mine. We were the only two in the cinema and we were scared shitless, but we were having so much fun being scared together. The movie itself is great. It's like a pretty generic murder mystery with some decent twists and turns, or investigative thriller with some decent twists and turns, but some really effective jump scares and really effective tension throughout the film. If you're a horror fan, you've been served well this year. Smile is definitely one to check out if you haven't. Number 16 was a movie I was so pumped to see based on the actor alone, Nick Cage, in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This was just, it was everything that the package said it was going to be. It delivered on the comedy, the action, and the unhingedism of Nick Cage. So I don't want to say too much about this film. It is fantastic. It is a hell of a lot of fun. Check it out because it's Nick Cage at his most Nick Cageiest. Also, it's a fantastic buddy comedy with Pedro Pascal, who really, really commits to the bit. Like I said with Smile, it's been a good year for horror fans, and number 15 just solidifies that with Barbarian. What a unconventional screenplay. This movie is one movie, then it's another movie, then it's another movie, and it just gets more and more fucked up as it goes on. It's highly enjoyable. It's darkly funny with, I think I laughed the hardest with Justin Long in this film, out of any movie I've seen this year. So highly recommend it. Dark comedy, but really fucked up horror. Barbarian, check it out. Number 14 is The Northman, Robert Eggers' new film. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I think it's his most mainstream movie, or his most accessible movie, which is definitely saying something for Robert Eggers. But Alexander Skarsgård gives this primal performance that's just so guttural with his physicality and his emotionality. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is fantastic in the film, and Claes Bang is brilliant as the villain. This is one of those movies that just really pulls you into the world. You feel so immersed into the Viking culture of The Northman, and I think it's a brilliant movie. I think Robert Eggers is 3 for 3. This movie, when it hit Cannes, people loved it. It won the Palme d'Or. Then it got it to like a normal mainstream cinema release, and people were a little bit more divided on it. But I saw it earlier in the year at Melbourne Film Festival, and Triangle of Sadness, I just found hilarious. I think it's absurd. I think it's an absurd, eat the rich sort of tale, but I did have a lot of fun with it. There are problems. I think the ending is too long. I think the movie itself is too long, but the ending definitely drags out a little bit. But I didn't mind that it was very like hammer over the head obvious with its message of how entitled and stupid rich people are with their rich people isms. I think you're gonna hear isms a lot in this video. But Triangle Sadness just worked for me. I laughed a lot. The vomiting scene alone is just so crazy that if you are not sold on the movie by that scene, you probably won't enjoy the rest of it. And I was sold. I had so much fun with Triangle of Sadness. Number 12 is possibly one of the more bleak films. Actually, no, I have another bleak film later on. This is one of the most bleak films of the year, and that's Netflix's All Quiet on the Western Front. But as bleak as it is a beautifully made film. Aesthetically, cinematography-wise, it is a painting. This movie is just so visually well constructed, but it is such a strong anti-war film that it is kind of effective. It was one of those movies that you feel the brutality of the death of all these soldiers. The lead performance is brilliant, but it's just a harrowing movie that stays with you. And those aren't always easy movies to watch, but All Quiet on the Western Front does it in such a technically beautiful and marvelous way that you just can't stop watching it. Number 11 is a movie that I feel like I saw at the right time, and it hit me at the right level at that time, and that's James Gray's Armageddon Time. I loved this movie. I'm a big fan of Ad Astra, his previous film, and I know he has come out and said that movie was tweaked beyond his control, but I still really enjoyed Ad Astra. But Armageddon Time is such a personable, it's such a smaller movie too. It feels very intimate and raw to his life. And I get really drawn in by those sorts of stories when someone can be very vulnerable on screen. And Armageddon Time really did that for me. Anthony Hopkins, in the few scenes that he's in, is so impactful on screen. And he feels like and everyone's granddad to the young kid character in the film. So it's moving. It is a bit slow, but the raw intimacy of looking into this kid's life, it won me over. I really enjoyed Armageddon Time. Now we are into the top 10. We're into the juiciness of this list. And horror is 2022 has been the year of horror for me. And I loved The Black Phone. I saw it a couple of times at the cinemas, and I was lucky enough to do a couple of interviews with Scott Derrickson and Ethan Hawke and the two kids, Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw, in the film. And seeing the film before the interviews, I was like, oh shit, man, that's a good horror movie. Like, I really enjoyed it. And then I spoke to them, and then I saw it again, and I was like, oh man, this is actually just a great movie. Like, Scott Derrickson not only gets horror well, but he gets the coming of age story and the odd comedy that comes with that at the beginning. But there's also a very dark domestic violence storyline that's happening that works well in the story. And he juggles these different tones and different genres in the beginning so well that you care so much about the characters that when they are in danger, when the horror starts finally hitting, you are fully invested into the fact that you want these kids to be saved. And then Ethan Hawke, on top of that, as an absolutely despicable villain in The Grabber with that creepy as fuck mask. There is just so many things in this movie that worked. I think it's effectively tense. There's some good jump scares. I don't think there's as many jump scares as Smile. That probably wins for jump scares for this year. But the tension and the disturbing nature of the film is so well done by Scott Derrickson. Black Phone just topping off a great year of horror. Number 9, I think people are going to be shocked that number 9 is this far down on my list, because I do think if we're talking like Oscar race stuff and movies of the year, this is probably the best movie of the year. But there was like movies that I enjoyed a bit more than this, but The Banshees of Inisherin is flawlessly fantastic. Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Martin McDonagh reunited the In Bruges trilogy of people back again for The Banshees of Inisherin, which starts out as a very quirky, funny comedy and just progressively gets more dark as the movie goes on, but in a way that is an incredible examination of mental health and stoicism, and especially relationships between men and men who don't want to talk about how other people make them feel, and I guess that's where that stoicism comes into play. And it gets dark, but it still maintains that dark level of humor that McDonagh is really popular for. So on top of that, the performances from Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, Colin Farrell, and Barry Keoghan are outstanding. I think all of them should be in consideration when it comes to the big awards like the Oscars, because Banshees of Inisherin is beautiful, and it's a beautiful looking movie too. Number 8, Jordan Peele is 3 for 3. Nope. I loved Nope. I've only seen it the once in the cinemas, and then I watched it at home, actually not that long ago, and it held up. It is a movie about spectacle that is just done in such a... I still feel like I'm trying to break down the film as I talk about it to people, and I'm finding out new things about it. But it's so much more than a UFO attack movie. It is a beautifully crafted, visually stunning film. Daniel Kaluuya, I think, is just going from strength to strength as an actor, and this is probably the most subdued role he's done to date. This is probably the most he's done, but the least amount he's done as a character. Keke Palmer, though, steals the show. I think she needs more love and praise because of how good she is in this movie. But I was on the edge of my seat. I think the way the story interweaves its themes is incredibly well done. I love the stuff with Stephen Yen and Gordy. I have rewatched the Gordy scene multiple times on the 4K that I own because I am just so gripped by the tension of that scene and how good it looks in the IMAX format. If you watched Nope and you kind of liked it but didn't fully get it, keep watching it and you will find more and more and more. It is a brilliant, brilliant movie. It is my number 8 for the year. Number 7 is probably the bleakest movie on this list, and it is bleaker than All Quiet on the Western Front. And it's another Netflix movie, Australian film, The Stranger. This is a tough subject matter, and it's never easy to make movies that are actually genuinely effective about true crime, and especially things as horrific as child abduction and child murder. But The Stranger does it in a way that helps. It's similar to what Nitroom did for the Port Arthur massacre a few years ago. It's a way for audiences to understand why these things happen without justifying or making you empathize why these things happen. Sean Harris is horrifying in this, and it's such a subdued performance. He also nails the Australian accent, which is a tough fucking thing to do. And I think Joel Edgerton gives the performance of career. I think this is Joel Edgerton at his absolute best in The Stranger. It is a tough watch. It is a slow burn, and it will not be for everyone. But I said this on the Monthly Movie Marathon podcast, I believe if you can make a film that is about an incredibly disturbing subject matter that you don't want to be a part of, but you can be fully immersed in that world, then you've done your job as a movie, and The Stranger really did that for me. Number 6 is the movie that I think people were gonna love regardless before it came out. There was such a big fan base going into this film, and with the people who were behind it, it seemed like it was going to be too good to fail. And it worked for me, The Batman. I think The Batman was brilliant. I love Matt Reeves as a director. I genuinely think his Planet of the Apes trilogy, or the 2 movies he did in the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy, are so severely underlooked. I think War for the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes are brilliant. But then he comes to Batman and he absolutely kills it. It's this gritty, dark take that's not absurdly violent. It's about a serial killer, but it's not... It's like an accessible mainstream serial killer vibe. So... And I'm trying to justify why The Batman's good when everyone went out and saw it and loved it. So The Batman's number 6 for me. I like R-Pats, or R-Bats as we should call him from now on. And if it goes ahead in the new DCU with James Gunn, I would be excited to see where this Batman goes and where Barry Keoghan's Joker goes too. Number 5 for me was probably the most fun that I've had in a cinema this year. And that was a movie that... It was like easily my most anticipated film of the year, Jackass Forever. I am a Jackass kid through and through. I grew up on the MTV show. I grew up on the movies. I grew up filming myself doing stupid shit. If you want to hear that stupid shit, Monthly Movie Marathon Jackass episode, I tell Peter Gray and all of you at home the dumb shit that I got up to with a little video camera growing up. But Jackass Forever it's this beautiful almost swan song, because if it is the end of the original Jackass crew as we know it, and they're ushering in the new age, then it's a beautiful swan song, because it is turned in from this, deplorable guys being mean and doing like really stupid shit, to over the 20 years they've been doing it, growing together as a family and brothers. And I love to see that camaraderie on screen. These are guys who genuinely love each other but they love doing dumb shit, and they're all willing to put their bodies on the line to do it. And it just reminds me of me and my mates growing up. I love my mates dearly, but we got up to some stupid shit, and it got us hurt sometimes, and it got my friends hurt sometimes, but it was always fun to put each other through that. And I think the genuine love that these guys have for what they do, but for, you know, what they do and who they're doing it with each other, is so infectious on the screen. And that's why Jackass Forever was so much fun. It was so tough watching it without Ryan Dunn and, of course, Bam Margera, because they are still two iconic parts of the series for me. But I love the new guys who came in, and I think they're going to do some amazing stuff. I think there's a TV show. I think there's like a revitalized Jackass in the works at the moment. Sign me up for more. I'm so excited. Number 4, this movie actually isn't coming out in Australia until next year, but I saw it at the Brisbane International Film Festival. There was at this point a little bit of hype behind it, but now more people have seen it, and it is not only a strong directorial debut from this filmmaker, but this movie, even over Clerks 3, possibly has the greatest last 10 minutes, the greatest ending of a film I've seen in like 10, 15 years. And that's Charlotte Wells' After Sun. This is a brutal movie to watch. It's not as brutal as when you're watching it. And it's one of those ones where you're always trying to piece together what's going to happen, what's going to come next. But at the same time, while you're trying to do that, you're watching this story of a daughter and her father try and bond with each other. And you know, the daughter's, she's 9, 10 years old. She's sort of coming of age and growing up. And it's a young father who's dealing with the fact that he has lost some of his youth as well, but he doesn't always know how to deal with that. And it's just so much happening in this film, but the way the end of the film comes together and ties together visuals that we've seen throughout the film and themes that we've been sort of analyzing throughout the film is stunning in the most heartbreaking way. And when After Sun finished at the Brisbane Film Festival screening that we were at, the credits rolled and no one talked, no one moved, no one pulled out a phone for like literally 2 minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're just sitting there in a room and credits are playing with like 100 people in there and no one does anything for 2 minutes, you notice how long that is. And that's how effective After Sun is. When it's out in cinemas in February in Australia, 100% please go watch it. It is a fantastic movie. The top fucking three, boys. Let's go. Let's have a bit more happy juice. Now, top 3. These are movies that when I saw them, and in fairness, I guess After Sun was one as well, but these are 3 movies that I knew straight away were going to be in my top movies of the year. Like, there was no chance these movies weren't going to do it. So I gave After Sun a 5 out of 5, but I also gave these 3 movies a perfect 5 out of 5 rating. I love these movies with all my heart. Number 3, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Was on my most anticipated list. I was excited just based on the Daniels who were directing it because I thought Swiss Army Man was brilliant. I even think their Turned Down for What music video was brilliant. But this is a movie that had 2 rocks that made you cry. Rocks just sitting there with subtitles on the screen and you cried because it is so beautifully written. It's a family relationship drama that's also a multiverse movie, that's also a comedy with hot dog fingers and a kung fu movie. Talk about balancing genres and themes, but the Daniels did it. Michelle Yeoh is brilliant. Stephanie Sue is brilliant. I do think Jamie Lee Curtis is great. I would probably not be putting her forward for the nominations for this movie alone because I think there are better supporting performances, Stephanie Sue, in this film. And Ke Huy Quan. What a comeback. I love the Goonies. And it's so good to see him back. And his performance as Raymond in this film is just out fucking standing. When he sits there, when he's standing there looking so cool and suave in his suit and he looks at Michelle Yeoh and goes, "In another life, I wish we would just be doing laundry and taxes." I was just like, bro. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Please watch it. I think it's on Binge now in Australia. So if you have the Binge streaming service, just sign the fuck up and watch it because it's a beautiful movie. Number 2 is a streaming release, but I was so lucky to see this at Sydney Film Festival. And you see a movie that's like, it's not a big spectacle of a film. And it's not one of those films that, you know, you would think about like, oh, I'm going to keep going and rewatching that because I'm so entertained by it. But it's those movies that hit you on a personal level. And while I haven't been through everything that happens in this film from like an event and premise and thematical level, but there's something about watching movies about dudes in their young 20s that going through some of the things that you went through growing up, whether it's like trying to find your purpose or trying to find things to do. And you always, I think the thing with Cha Cha Real Smooth, which is from Cooper Raiff, is that it's about a guy who doesn't want to do what everyone else is doing. And that's me. I don't always want to just do things because you have to do them in a societal level. And he's trying to find his way doing that, but he gets caught up in so many other things. But I also have such an affinity for movies that use people who are people with disabilities in film. And Vanessa Burkhart, who is on the autism spectrum and plays a girl in this film who is on the autism spectrum, it's such a beautiful performance, and her chemistry with Cooper Raiff is outstanding. But then his chemistry with Dakota Johnson is phenomenal in this film. And this is another movie that the last 5 minutes brought me to absolute tears. There was one scene where I started tearing up and I could feel the tears flow down my face at Sydney Film Festival. I was like, surely it's not gonna get sadder than this. And then the movie ends on such a beautiful gut punch, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, now I gotta walk through Sydney crying my eyes out, but it was so worth it. Cha Cha Real Smooth is on Apple TV Plus. There's no excuse to not watch it. It is a fantastic film. I've listened to that soundtrack all year long since I saw that movie. It was actually like the whole soundtrack is basically my Spotify Wrapped for the year. Number one, I haven't said this movie yet, so you probably know what my number one is going to be, but I had this film as my phone wallpaper back when it was supposed to come out in 2020. I love the original film, but I'm not like a diehard on it, but I do really enjoy it. But when I first saw the trailer for Top Gun Maverick, I was like, oh, there's something different going on here. Like, this doesn't feel like a normal blockbuster. And fuck me, it was not. It was so much more than that. This is why we go to the movies. Like, I genuinely believe Top Gun Maverick is why we go to the movies. It is such a big scale action blockbuster with the actors who are in the planes, doing the stunts, flying around. It's fucking mental. The whole last 30 minutes of this movie are unreal. But there's a genuinely good story in here. There is Tom Cruise and Miles Teller, as well as everyone else, Jennifer Connelly and everyone else, are fully dedicated to the bit of this movie, which makes the human drama so good. The relationship between Maverick and Rooster is outstanding, and it punches you in the gut, and it makes you smile when they are fighting and working together. So, and those elements there, but then it's a beautiful looking film. The soundtrack is great. Lady Gaga's song is brilliant, but when they play Danger Zone, or like the Top Gun theme going into Danger Zone at the beginning, I was like, this is the big screen. This is why we're here. I saw it 3 times in cinemas. I saw it once at the press screening, which was a couple of weeks before release. So I was like, and I remember turning around again to Josh from Film Notions. I turned around and I just went, 5 stars, right? That's 5 stars. And he was like, yeah, that's 5 stars. So I was on board straight away. And then I saw it again in a Dolby Atmos theater with the cinema speakers were brilliant. And then for the shits and giggles of it, I saw it in 40X. And that was a lot of fun too. I had a lot of, I'm going to call it Christmas weight from last year. And I was jiggling around everywhere in the fucking 40X, but I had so much fun with it. And it's a movie that it feels like it can span across all generations. Like everyone did love this movie. It's the highest grossing movie of the year so far. Avatar's not too far behind, but I really genuinely hope Top Gun sticks it out. And it's a movie that everyone can watch, that everyone can enjoy, that is so nail-bitingly thrilling. It is seat-grabbing excitement, but it is so sincere and authentic. And I think a lot of that is the fucking madman Tom Cruise, who knows what the fuck he's going to do next with Mission Impossible. But Top Gun Maverick is my number one film of the year. I've spoken a lot, so let's wrap it up. This has been a fantastic year for films, a fantastic year for Netflix Fix. I thank you all again so much for your support. I have so much fun doing what I do, and I have so much fun when I get so excited when I edit a review or edit a podcast or edit an interview and know it's about to go out into the world and you guys are going to see it, and that just makes me so fucking happy. I genuinely love doing what I do, and I love the people who surround me with that. There are so many people that I can thank, that I have thanked personally throughout the year, who are massive influences on me, who are absolutely fantastic friends to me in this space. And it's just, I honestly don't know what I'd be doing without you guys. I would hate to think of an alternate reality, everything everywhere all at once style, where I wasn't doing this. And it sucks. It would fucking suck. So thank you to everyone who really pushes me to be better at this every year and keep growing what I do, and watch movies, try something new, enjoy the fuck out of movies, because sometimes you just need the escape, and sometimes you just need to hear a good story that you wouldn't hear anywhere else, and movies can give you that. So here's the 2023. Thank you all. I love you all so much. I'm excited to see what the future holds. Thanks, guys.